Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we are going to be reviewing the film All of Us Strangers. Sarah, kick us off with an IMDb summary for this film.
A screenwriter drawn back to his childhood home enters into a fledgling relationship with his downstairs neighbor while discovering a mysterious new way to heal from losing his parents 30 years ago.
All right. So, in Movies and Us tradition, we will kick off the episode with our one-sentence summaries for this film. Sarah, what was yours?
Mine is, writing will take you to unexpected places.
Oh, yes, indeed. Yeah, there's a shot of his computer screen, and the one line he writes unfolds quite a bit for the rest of this film. My one-sentence summary is, what happens when the what ifs come to life?
Yes, that is exactly what happens. Well done.
Yep. Okay, I am excited to talk about this movie with you because I'm so intrigued your thoughts about this film. In this first section, we will not spoil this movie. We'll share our thoughts at a high level, and then we will include a spoiler alert. So, Sarah, I'm so curious. How did All of Us Strangers work or not work for you?
So, this is one of those movies where I realize that I am the problem. So we've talked about this before. When I watch movies, the first time I am viewing this very logically, very strategically. I'm analyzing everything and I'm not engaging with the film emotionally. Usually that happens on the second or third go around because then I know where the story is going. I know what's happening, so then I can allow myself to get into the flow and feel the emotions. And that's what happened with this. I was just analyzing this whole thing. And so I didn't feel the weight of it. Most of the reviews that I've read are oh my gosh, this is an incredibly emotional film. Everybody was weeping, all of that. And I was oh, okay, I did not have this experience, but it was because I was looking at it very analytically and trying to figure it out. And so I really wish that I had better planned for this recording to have the time to watch this twice so that maybe I could allow myself to feel it a little bit more the second time. But I didn't. But even with that, I think that this is a really creative way to explore grief. And I think that that's really powerful. Some of the things that are included with that. Andrew Scott gives a fantastic performance. As always, he is just such a tremendous actor, and you see him really shining in this film. It's a very, very well made film. So it is one that I would recommend seeing. But yeah, I was viewing it analytically rather than feeling the emotions. So it wasn't as impactful for me as maybe it was for a lot of other people.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be a fascinating episode. I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. As the person who often is willing to be take me film wherever we want to go, tug on all of my heartstrings, this movie really didn't work for me, man. I did not yes, I know. This is why I'm okay, I really wanted you to possibly like this so then I could pick your brain on why this is working. Because like you mentioned, there's so much critical acclaim. It is moving audiences in really powerful ways. It got nominated for 6 BAFTAs. The critics are raving about it. And the audience is weeping in the theater watching. There is so much positive reception for this film. So I am now looking at myself and what about this didn't work for you? The thing that I've identified to be kind of the key thing for me is I just personally didn't have enough time, I felt to connect with our main character and really know who he was. And I can see that part of the point is that it doesn't this is about his experience of grief. But I felt I never knew who he was. And then also then you introduce this second character in Harry, who is meant to be more of a mystery, which is fine. He can be kind of this vague, mysterious figure that comes into Andrew Scott's character's life, but I didn't feel emotionally connected to him. Therefore, obviously the rest of the journey that we go on doesn't unfold the way that it's meant to, with that deep emotional impact. So I was actually thinking a lot about the movie Aftersun, because it's similar to me in a lot of ways, in that it explores this kind of repressed grief in our main characters. Paul Mescal's the lead in that film, and it's very subtle and nuanced and poetic in the way that is kind of this mood piece to just express this emotion, and it doesn't follow this like strong narrative arc or anything like that. It is just, let's sit and saturate ourselves in what this feeling is like and what that healing might look like for our main character. So Aftersun's a film that like I've raved about. I absolutely loved it. So I was trying to think about like what was it about that worked for me, and this one not so much. And the thing that I keep pointing back to is if the character connection isn't there, I think the rest of it doesn't work as well. So maybe that's the missing piece for me. But I really didn't enjoy this film at all. I found it to be like a real difficult time to get through. I think I had to like take a break and come back to it. I mean, there's a lot of big emotions in it as well. The overall like mood of the entire piece is very somber because of the subject matter. But towards the end of the film, I also have some issues, which could just be a me thing, which I acknowledge, but I'm intrigued to talk about those with you. But I just had some issues with the way that some things are positioned for the characters' sense of healing in some way, which I'm excited to talk with you, your thoughts about the way the movie handled some of those pieces. So my overall thoughts were, man, this really didn't work for me at all. And it's been a while since a movie hasn't worked for me this much. So that was noteworthy as well.
Wow. Okay, I am fascinated because like I was watching this and I'm like, well, I am a robot, like this is just normal for me in a really like emotional film where I'm just like, no, we got to figure it out first and then we can feel emotions. So I am surprised. This is going to be so fun to talk about. But I do agree there is something with the ending that I was like, oh, I don't like this, because it made me view the whole movie in a different light, and it makes me have some additional questions that I don't think the movie wants me to ask, but it definitely took me down a rabbit trail that I was like, oh, I don't think I like this. I don't think I like this choice. So yeah, the ending will be really interesting to talk about for sure.
Agreed. And there's like a lot of things that happen in the ending that I think we can definitely unpack a lot. Yeah. All right. Well, this was our initial thoughts of All of Us Strangers. We are now going to give you a spoiler alert. So if you haven't seen this film, the critics are raving about it. So there's potentially something there for you. We are going to unpack the rest of our thoughts about All of Us Strangers in the rest of this episode, and we will dive into all of the plot points that happen. So this is your spoiler alert. Okay, should we talk about the ending? I'm intrigued to hear what qualms you have with it, and I will share mine, and then we can match to see which ones are similar, perhaps different, and things we had issues with,
Yeah, I think the thing that has been bothering me is that Harry is dead, and he's been dead all along, essentially. And so okay, so instead of this being like a beautiful moment that they shared, then I'm like, okay, was this all then imagined? Was this just a figment of Adam's imagination, this whole relationship with Harry? Because then that kind of like takes the meaning out of it for me. I think it's, for me, like a lot more beautiful if over the course of their relationship, Adam begins to open up and begins to like be vulnerable and reveal these sides of himself to another person. That's really beautiful and important, I think, especially if you've been really like guarded and kind of like almost held captive by your grief. That ability to like open up is so precious. But then if Harry's dead, then what actually happened? You know, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So then the whole movie is just him imagining conversations with this random neighbor that he met one time and with his parents who died 30 years ago. Like, which, sure, that's probably some value to that. But I was just like, oh no, if he's dead, I have some questions about Adam and what he's going through and kind of his mental state, because I think this it isn't as beautiful and healing and heartwarming if he's just imagining a whole relationship with a dude that he met once.
Yep. And it also totally takes the air out of the entire balloon that we've been blowing through the
Right?
entire like hour and 45-minute experience to be like, actually, none of this was real. None of this happened. The character growth that you were invested in this protagonist, just kidding. Just kidding, everybody.
Yeah.
None of it's real. Actually, our character's in a far worse state than we ever thought that he was in. Like, it's already quite a lot. And we experience that throughout the course of the film of his delusions with his parents, which I think is indicative of the mental state that he's in. But it's alongside this opening up and unraveling of himself to another person that is really holding space for him and loving him through it. Like, okay, that we can get on board with that. But the ending feels really tragic because this character that supposedly we've been building this connection with, our protagonist, is actually far more in a darker place than we ever even thought he was. And we already thought he was in a dark place throughout the whole course of the movie. So that's just really depressing.
Yeah, definitely. And like I don't even mind the idea of Harry taking his own life. Like, that makes sense to me with what we know about that character, but the fact that he's been dead the whole time is the problem, because like you said, it just takes all of the air out of the balloon. And it was like, so then what were we just doing for the last hour and 40 minutes? You know, like, what was the point if he's been dead this whole time?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I could see some version of this working, perhaps. I'm trying to workshop this, where that realization that comes then is indicative of like this character's experience of grief in general, right? Like, if the focus of this film is on, it's a mood piece around grief and trauma and kind of the state of mind of another character, a person that we're watching, a very real human being go through over the course of the film, and that is the goal of this film, then perhaps framing it from this lens of like, hey, some of this like might not even be real. I think had there been more clues along the way that to kind of insinuate or tip us off to or give us the doubting of like, okay, how is Adam really? Like, is this whole relationship with Harry real or not real? I think had there been more seeds of doubt planted along the way, maybe this could be an interesting way to reflect on the entire experience of the film, being like, this is the headspace that he was in and how much this person longs for this connection, this desire to be loved, this reconciliation with his family. Like, I think the use of delusion and those hallucinations that he experiences throughout the film is a really interesting like device to showcase the things that Adam is longing so desperately for, right? And so if there's more insinuation that this relationship with Harry is one of those many delusions, I think it could have worked a little bit more. But I was not tipped off to that at all. Like, I did not realize at all that that was a possibility. So it was a total shock to me at the end. And then I'm now upset because the whole thing that we were doing this whole time is now totally reframed versus had seeds of doubt been planted along the way. And I was also questioning that the whole time. Then perhaps that reveal can feel like a meaningful, like, no, this he longs for a relationship as well. And it's one of the things that contributes to his loneliness and his grief, all that stuff. Maybe that could have worked a little bit more, but I did not see any signs of that over the course of the film. Did you see it coming at all, or was it a surprise to you too? You often are better at spotting these things or sensing there might be something different that they're going to do a head fake on.
Yeah, I was wondering how much of this is real. Pretty much the whole time. I For me it started with the fact that they were the only ones in that building, living in that apartment building, and I was like, this doesn't add up to me. And so that was the first like seed of doubt of like, hey, maybe maybe none of this is real. And then like there were little things throughout, like some of their conversations I was like, I don't feel like this is a real conversation. And then at one point Harry is wearing the cardigan that we saw Adam in the beginning, and I was like, okay, we haven't seen like Harry in a lot of other circumstances outside of Adam's house or outside of his apartment. And then they go outside of his apartment though. And that was when I was like, well, maybe am I just overthinking this and he does exist? So the whole thing was me just trying to figure out, is this real or is this fake? Which is not the point of the movie, but that is what I was expending my energy trying to figure out, is what is real and what is fake. And then I wanted to know, like, if all of this is just in his mind, I guess I shouldn't say fake because it was real to him, but like if all of this he's imagining, then what is he actually doing? Like, is there something wrong with Adam? Like, is he like, I was like, does he have like cancer or something, and he's reminiscing and trying to like grapple with grief and something as like he's battling this illness? Or like, is he in a mental institution and is like struggling with it? Like, I kept like, what is this guy? Like, help me understand what is going on with him that then leads him to these things. Because like, and writing a screenplay about your past and your history, sure, yes, that is a great setup because you're already going down memory lane. But like, the extent of his imagination made me go, okay, is there something more here that the movie is not telling me? So I was allowing my imagination to run wild while watching his imagination run wild. So there we go.
Yes. I also was like, he's got to be on something. You know what I mean? Like, this is, and there are the scenes where he's with Harry and they're at the club and they're on all kinds of substances. So I'm like, so many of these scenes with his family felt like that, and then it just kind of like expands out once again and zooms out once again to be like, no, actually the whole thing was imagined. Which I think, to your point, like, it perhaps, I don't know, that's why I'm intrigued to like pick the brains of people that like really enjoy this, because I also expended a lot of energy just trying to understand like what is happening, what is going on. And I think it does take away from the emotions of just the experience of this character. You know, like, we're just trying to figure out like, what world is this? Is it a sci-fi world? Is it a fantastical world? Like, what is this? It also doesn't help, honestly, that I went into this movie seeing that the genre categorization was fantasy / romance. So the whole time I'm also like, there's some fantastical component to this, surely, which I guess kind of there is, because a lot of it is basically imagined, but it doesn't help. The brain's working on overdrive, you know, to just try and understand like, what is this? And the more time that we spend in that headspace, the less time my heart is feeling all the things it's supposed to be feeling.
Once again, genres not helpful. Like, It
Yeah.
really does set you up with some unrealistic expectations for this to be a fantasy. And I see how they can get there, but I don't know. That would not have been my first choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. Maybe like romance slash drama, perhaps. But also, I think I would have
Yeah.
been more upset at the end when there's this even grander reveal that it's all imagined anyway. I'm like, I did not see that coming from a mile away. I thought this was a beautiful romance unfolding between two people that have experienced much in their lives and are able to finally let themselves be vulnerable with each other. That is a beautiful story. And now you're going to take it away from me? Oh, that's that's a that's a tough thing to get ripped away, especially when you're so invested in seeing these two seem to like really connect with each other.
Yeah, that's why I don't understand that choice. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, to me that one choice undoes the entire movie. And I
Hmm.
I just don't get it. I don't understand.
Nope. I did not like it.
Cool. Great. I'm glad
Um,
that I'm not the only one.
yeah, no, I was like shocked when I saw the whiskey bottle. That was the same one that he was holding the first night that they met. And I was like, okay, but maybe he's been nursing that one for the next couple days. And then they start having that whole conversation. I'm like, okay, no, you're really doing this to me. Okay. Oh, okay. I see you. I see you. I also hated the whole ending shot of like the two of them with the light beam and then it zooms out and then they become a beam of light and the stars in the galaxy, blah, blah, blah. I I hated that. I thought it didn't work for me at all. And I can get behind some sentimental stuff like that. That's a little bit cheesy and whatnot. If I'm emotionally invested, I'm like, oh, wow, a love story for the ages. But it didn't work for me at all. What were your
Be-
thoughts about that ending shot?
like it doesn't work because it didn't happen. Like you know what I mean? Like if they actually had a relationship and then Harry died, like okay, yes, sure, amazing. Yes. But like they 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 didn't have a relationship because it was in Adam's mind, so it's real to Adam. So okay, cool, but like
Yeah.
it just it takes all the meaning out of all of it. So then
Yes.
like it's beautiful, it's a nice idea, but that one choice I think just cheapens all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. With the song "The Power of Love" in the background, and like though it wasn't real anyway.
Yeah. But
This is
Jen,
coming from like two realists too that are just like, you
that's
know what I
true.
mean? Like we are not. This is why when you were sharing your thoughts and at the beginning, I was like, oh, this is gonna be an echo chamber episode, which I'm excited for because like we love to feel validated our emotions, but I also am just like, this is really working for a lot of people. Like we are the anomalies here. We must acknowledge.
Yeah, yeah. Of this duo, this
Hmm.
was supposed to work for you
This
and
was
not
supposed
work
to
for
work for me.
me.
I
Just
was
based
supposed to
on
be the one that was like,
yes.
but Sarah, but you know,
Yes.
making the case for it. This shot in this motion,
Yes.
this
Yeah.
I have not done my part for this
And
episode,
you know
so
what?
here we
That's
are.
okay. I love that I am not the only person because I do know this about myself. Like I am not a romance movie person. I also
Mhm.
do not feel emotions usually the first time while watching a movie. Like so I was like, "Oh no. I am the wrong person to review this movie with." So I'm glad that I'm not the only one.
I did
Makes me
read
feel
that one
better.
other person who wrote a review also share a similar sentiment where they said they
Mm.
watched it the second time, really surrendering themselves over to the
Mhm.
movie, and it worked for them a lot better and they could
Okay.
understand the acclaim. So I think there is something to what you're saying around now that you know the framing of everything, perhaps the second time around, this really can just be that emotional mood piece. I don't know. I don't want to watch this again. I really hated my
No.
experience watching this. So
Well, and I
It
think
was really
for me,
tough.
like that ending makes me not want to watch it again. Like, why am I going to go through all of these really big, hard emotions just
Yes.
to have the rug pulled out from under me? Like, that's not
Yes.
fun. If you're going to make me feel these hard emotions, make it worth it. And
Yes.
that doesn't seem worth it to me. So I'm probably
Mhm.
not going to watch it a second time, even though I probably should, so that I could have a more
Can
human
interrogate this for yourself.
experience. Uh, yeah, I hated that choice so much. I
Mm,
still don't understand why they made that choice. Like,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
frustrating.
Hmm. The other thing that I learned after watching this movie is that this was based on a book, and that in some ways makes a lot of sense to me because I think it is such a like a movie around like the experiences and thoughts and processing and reflections of a single character and getting into their headspace and honestly, one of the best parts of this movie is Andrew Scott's performance. I'll give a shout out to him. Like he does such a great job dealing with it, very many nuanced emotions and showing this like repressed grief and pain that like wants to come flooding out but is so restrained. Like I think a lot of scenes he nails from that perspective. But I do wonder what the book is like because this is loosely, it's not a very like clear adaptation. I think there's a lot of things that were changed from the book premise and characters. It was set in Japan. It's about a divorcee, and he meets a woman in his building. And I think it's, from what I've read, a lot more focused on like the mystery and the like chillier mood, whereas this is a little bit more warm, a little bit more sentimental, and it's focused on a different type of set of protagonists. So I do think, though, that I wasn't surprised when I read that this was based on a book because so much of it is so focused on the emotions and the thoughts of and the inner life, the inner emotional life of a single character's journey. And that can be hard to translate to the big screen.
Yeah, that's it's also fascinating that it's a loose adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
Because honestly, what you described sounds great. Like now I want to read this book. That sounds fascinating.
Uh-huh.
Um, I don't know. That's interesting that
Yep.
they chose to loosely adapt to that this to the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hmm.
Yep. And change some of these key parts and kind of the
Hmm.
mood also being different. I think like the
Yeah.
beginning of the film leans probably a little bit more closely to what the book's mood was like, which is like there's this sense of eeriness. It seems like the last two people on Earth, right? Like this sense of emptiness and kind of that settling in and the loneliness and all of that. I think the book sounds like leans a lot more into. And then once um, Harry and Adam begin to develop their relationship, the mood of the film honestly takes quite a big shift as well. There's a long, like middle section stretch of time where it's really just them talking and falling in love, and it feels like such a answer to the loneliness that we see Adam experience throughout the first third of the film. But then, like we already talked about in the third act, they undo so much of that. So that pacing also I think is a little bit different. Whereas I think the book probably leans a little bit more into the mysteriousness, the eeriness, the chillier side of kind of the first act of this movie, which sounds honestly like a fun time. That sounds like a very entertaining premise.
Right? Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Let's let's do that. Let's make another movie more closely tied to the book.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. One of the other overarching issues I had with this movie, which could just be me fixating on this and interpreting it differently than perhaps the movie intended. So I am intrigued your point of view. But there's this whole theme throughout the film around Adam envisioning what his parents would feel or say to him knowing who he is now, which I think is a really fascinating part of losing a loved one, and as you've grown older, like wondering like would they be proud of you, would they accept you for who you are now, like all of those things. I love that he's thinking about that. He's asking those questions. They have those scenes, but there's this whole scene where there's this really warm and rosy like reconciliation amidst his family, which seems to be a place that he, I don't, well, the film positions it as this like really positive thing that he's found this healing and this reconciliation with his parents who have now understood their wrongs and apologized for the things that hurt him and accept who he is now and have like given him their blessing for this new relationship. And I, the whole time it felt to me like the film was painting as this like healing moment for him. And I'm just like, this is healing through a delusion. And I think that it is a definitely could be a source of comfort, but it also is disconnected from perhaps with the reality of who the memories that you've had and the potentially like healthier, more grounded way to heal and reconcile with them without this like overly rosy like they now accept you and love you for who you are. I think it's a like comforting balm to those wounds, but I don't think it actually gets to the root of those wounds. And I don't know if I'm just interpreting this the wrong way, but I kind of hated that whole bit because I think there's a way to recognize like my parents still might not accept who I am today and the choices that I made. And I will never have the opportunity to reconcile with them. But there is a way to come to terms with that and move forward from it without this overly rosy narrative that you've now formed for yourself, which I actually think is unhealthy and kind of unstable and can easily be undone because it is not based in truth. It's not based in what you knew about who they were at the time that you lost them. And I think it's comforting, but I don't think it's healthy. So I'm curious your thoughts on this whole thing because I can see how it can be cathartic for a character to experience this or for people watching this to experience that catharsis with this character that they are relating to. But I don't know if it's the healthiest. Is my hot take. So I'm curious your thoughts on this whole thing.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Honestly, I don't know that I thought about it all that much. I didn't think about it all that much, but I see where you're coming from. I think that there were parts that were maybe a little bit too rosy for me, but honestly, I was like, you know what? That's cool. You want to have like a happy time with your parents? Go for it. Like I want that for you cuz that was probably hard to lose them before your 12th birthday. Like, yeah, let's have this. So I don't think I was bothered by it that much just because I wanted this character to experience some sort of relief, and so this seemed to bring it to him. So I was like, all right, that's fine.
Okay. Cool.
I'm so sorry. I do see where you're coming from though.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's probably not, I don't know, it's probably not the most healthy thing in the world, but
Right.
it's like, all right, it's probably better than like crazy repression. So
there's some step in the better direction. Yeah, I suppose.
we're maybe taking some positive steps here, healing is not a linear journey. So
I suppose.
Whatevs. He's on the journey. He's been on the journey for 30 years and has arrived at this point. So
if this is what he needs, then like fine,
yeah.
go for it.
Yeah.
I guess. Okay.
I'm so sorry that I did not share your annoyance.
It's okay. I will just be here stewing. It's great. I think that there's a tendency. Well, I just think about the implications of like people watching this really connecting with it, really emotionally relating to it, and like the tendency that we now have in general to like rewrite narratives of things for ourselves so that it is like some source of comfort for ourselves, but it's actually like disconnected from what is true. And it's hard, but it's healthy to face what is true than to like use a sense of like comforting narrative to ease your pain, which is very real, but the implications beyond that is can be challenging. I think for this character perhaps it's a little bit easier because his parents are no longer here. But in general, in relationships or with ourselves, like when we rewrite narratives that are like not really connected to anything that is palpable, like it's a slippery slope before we start believing and constructing narratives that are actually not grounded in anything, but if they just feel good for us for a moment. Um, so perhaps that is what I'm reacting to more. And I see it in the way that he's dealing with all of his challenges and issues. That whole like scene where they're at his like childhood favorite restaurant and his parents are like full send, blessing him on his journey and like giving him essentially everything that he's ever longed for but never got. He's just giving it to himself, in this narrative that he's constructing, which is fascinating to think about in the context of him being a screenwriter as well. And maybe this is his way of healing through his art, is to imagine what this is like for him. Like, I think it's the detail of him being a screenwriter is really fascinating if you think about the movie as a whole.
Well, and I think that could have been a really important and helpful piece of this to help make sense of it, like if this whole thing is him writing and then he's going through all of these different moments and imagining his parents and his healing as he's writing, that's super cool. I love that idea. But the film doesn't really do that. Like, we see him with his laptop like 2 whole times in the whole runtime, and that's it. So I think if the screenwriting had been a little bit more prominent and we had seen him like actively working, and then as he's like sitting there typing away, then he's transported to this moment with his parents, and maybe there could have even been some like cool like cinematography things where like he like writes a scene and then it's like, oh wait, no, like that wasn't right, and then like deletes it all and like does the scene again. Like, there could have been so many like interesting creative things to do with that premise. And then to tie it back to healing through art, which is a very real thing, healing through writing, very real thing, as opposed to just imaginations about parents and healing through a relationship that actually turned out to not be real.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the interesting things about like healing through art is like this film basically positions himself as himself in all of those situations where he is satisfying the longings that he's been craving for those relational dynamics with his parents, right? Like, and I actually think it's a fascinating like visual choice to have him be like full grown adult with his parents who were like around the same age as him at the time, because visually it's very jarring, which I think was a fascinating choice to like feel that dissonance constantly throughout all of those scenes. And there's this whole like narrative discourse right now around like healing your inner child, and I feel like this film does such a fascinating job of showcasing that, of like we all have that like child inside of us that experience something or always long for something, and even though we've aged in time, that part of us in some ways has been frozen in time. And I think that dissonance is so cool, especially in some of the moments with him and his dad, because you can visibly see that they are literally the same age, in the same season and stage of life as they're having this conversation as father and son. All of that I thought was so cool, and I think one of the best parts of this movie.
No, I agree. I loved that juxtaposition, and especially those moments when he is like in his little kid PJs and goes downstairs to help decorate the tree, or climbs into bed with mom and dad. Like, I think that those were such powerful moments of him working to heal those childhood wounds now as an adult. I think that visually uh, makes that point of what is happening internally within him, and I thought that that was really powerful and a really smart creative choice.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. One of the best parts of this movie, I think. Just such a, I think we've seen the concepts of imagining things or flashbacks and whatnot, but I've never seen it done in this way before, which is really cool. And then we do get a few pretty interestingly done visual shots of like him seeing these faint uh kind of superimposing of his like truly his childlike self, like him on the subway, seeing the child version of him like in pain, like that. Those are the moments where we see him in his child, truly as his child self. um and for most of the film we actually don't get to see him in that mode. Like this movie is very intentional about using the concept of like age and how that visually looks and very specific moments to highlight a very specific point, which is kind of cool.
And there's that moment when he is hugging his dad in the living room, and you see his younger self in the mirror getting a hug from his
Oh
dad. And I
yeah.
thought that that was one of those moments that was just perfect and really drives that point home of he's been understandably stuck in this place for most of his life. And so now this is really allowing him to heal and process through those things and get those things that he has been longing for within himself since he was 12. So I thought that that was a really, really beautiful moment, just so well done.
Yeah, that was so cool. That was so cool. And because we don't get that a lot throughout this film, it's not like peppered everywhere. They don't overdo it. It's just few small little touches of showing that visually for his childlike self. Um, cool. Other things that we want to talk about with this film?
I just thought it was interesting the way that grief kind of works, and this kind of highlights that aspect where you don't necessarily remember the big things about someone, but you remember the little things. And you see that in a lot of the conversations between Adam and his parents, that like he remembers things like the putting the topper on the tree
Yeah.
and decorating the tree with his family, and he talks about with his dad how his dad always told him like not to cross his legs, and he said it again and again and again, and Adam remembers that but his dad didn't. And so it's just these little things that we store in our memory that might not seem so big. They're not always the big moments, but it's these little things that linger with us. And I think the movie does a really good job of illustrating those little moments that Adam experienced with his parents, and gets to kind of relive them in some way. And I thought that that was really really powerful. The types of
Mm,
vignettes that we see with his parents just illustrate how our memory works.
mm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And those little details around like places or traditions that feel significant too, like the tree topping at Christmas time, and then his favorite restaurant that they always went to as a kid, like those the significance that's placed on those little traditions or details around like places too that feel significant to get to go back to. Even him like going back physically each time to his childhood home, and I think for most of the film, it is back from what he remembers it to be, with the lights are on or he goes through the front door. And it's only in that last time that he tries to take Harry there that it's totally dark, and And so, like, revisiting a place that you spent so much time in, you like kind of can envision all of the things that you did. Like, here's where we did the gardening. Here's where I always came to the front door. Like, all of those little details come flooding back too. So the sense of place, it's very a ghost story esque of like a location has meaning, has like holds memories for you, is also kind of neat as well.
Yeah, his house, I had so many questions about though. Because I was like, this happened 30 years ago ish. Uh, what how is this house still here? Who currently owns the house? Are you just like walking into a stranger's house? Is this actually like I was trying to be too logical in a movie that you're just supposed to feel, and I was just worried every time he'd go inside the house that he was going to get like arrested or something because he was trespassing in somebody else's home. But that's probably just me.
Oh, I had that same thought especially when he went the last time with Harry. I'm like,
Yes.
he's
Yeah.
probably just been like lurking around, hanging out, sitting in the yard, or I don't know, maybe he's trespassing. Although it seems from the last uh, time that he went that he doesn't have access. It's not like an abandoned home; it's locked up. So is he just
Mm-hmm.
creeping
Yeah.
around, having these like moments of memory and illusions that are kind of circulating in his own brain? Because clearly he's not mentally grounded throughout this film. Like, yeah, like what does this look like from the outside perspective? Because we're all just soaked up in his brain right now. But what is actually happening in the real world?
Yes, that is what I wanted to see. That would have helped me
Mm-hmm.
tremendously. Because I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't understand. Like I get it. We're just supposed to be feeling feels. I understand that. But also, what's actually happening? What
Mm-hmm.
what does he look like in the real world?
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
We will never know, and that's
We'll
fine.
never know.
It is what it is.
Clearly, the rest of the world did not need this information, but you and I are like, but we need to know. We need to know, and I cannot give myself over to you until you tell me at least just give me a crumb to stay grounded in something.
Mm-hmm.
Nope,
Yeah. Yep. That would have been nice.
that would have been nice. One of the other, I think, interesting thread lines throughout this film is there's a lot of close-up shots of hands embracing hands throughout this movie, and I think you see it a lot, especially in the first interactions between um, Adam and Harry when they first meet, and like their hands linger with each other. It's just there's so much expression through that, and then there's a lot of times when he is with his parents and they are embracing, and in that final like conversation of reconciliation there's so many close-up shots of their hands embracing each other's, lots of hands hugging hands throughout this movie, and I felt like it was such an interesting contrast to this being so. I mean, by the end of the film we realize that this is all in his mind, and yet that desire for that like physical connection and the way that we express so much care and love through physically touching and embracing each other is just like a interesting dissonance, but also like a fascinating way to showcase how much that means to Adam as a character who we know to be lonely and isolated, and yet he craves this like human connection in these forms that can be expressed through the physical realm as well. So I just thought that that was such an interesting like thread line, and it was so prevalent throughout the film to see these close-up shots of just like light beams hitting hands that are embracing each other throughout the movie.
Maybe that'll be his screenplay name is Hands Hugging Hands.
Hands hugging
And
hands.
that's
Yes.
that's what we're working toward. But
Yeah.
I think it's a good point though, like especially because this is just about Adam processing through things. And so you can see how isolated he is. He's not just emotionally closed up, but like physically, he is
Mm-hmm.
alone. We don't see
Mm-hmm.
him. interacting with anybody other than Harry and his parents. So you yearn for that sense of like physical connection, because he is so alone all the time, and he's picked a profession where you're alone for a lot of the time.
Mm.
So I think that just highlights those things that he needs, and so then he's able to fulfill those in these moments with his parents. And then with Harry, who, what a bummer,
Yeah.
wasn't alive for all of his hand hugging. So that is sad.
Yeah. Yeah. Because once again, it didn't happen, apparently.
It's so frustrating to me, because like
Yeah.
the whole thing was like he's so closed off, and then he starts to have these moments with his parents, and he starts to heal, and then he's able to start like slowly opening up with this other real human who he can touch and he can hand hug all he wants.
Yes.
And then that's taken away. I know we already talked about this, but I'm still frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, also, if we zoom out and ground ourselves in the real life realm for a second, this is also just traumatizing for this character in general, who is already going through so much, to go downstairs to find the person that he met and kind of had a spark with, but he said no to several days later, and find his core. Like, that is traumatizing for any human, let alone this protagonist that is already in like a very mentally unstable state. Like, the facts of what's happening IRL is also just a lot. That is a lot. Unless that is also imagined too.
Oh, okay. So we have like a Russian nesting doll situation of imaginings.
Right.
Okay. It's like the
Or is this his
Inception, but
screenplay?
imaginings. Yeah.
Is this his screenplay? Yeah. And
Ooh,
he is like
okay.
writing all of the things he wants into the screenplay. And so he's actually just a dude who's living a very stable life, but just this is his screenplay.
Okay. Honestly, I like it. I will choose to accept this.
Yeah, this is good headcanon. I feel better about it. I feel happier for our character that we have.
I do too. I was so concerned about him. I was like, Adam, are you okay? Because you seem really not okay.
Okay, so we can both agree in our little world.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. In our little world, Adam is a very happy, content, stable writer, artist, screenwriter, who is exploring his childhood, exploring his longings, and writing them into existence. But he's chilling. He's chilling. He buys his groceries every week. He's living a healthy lifestyle. He has strong emotional relationships. He feels these emotions. And so he's writing them out into the world. That is what I want.
Sure. Yeah, that works for me.
Okay, good. This is how we deal with our longings, is to just be like, this is just truth now in our world. Truly, that's how it works, right? You just declare it to be true.
Yeah, we did it. we rewrote what we wanted out of this movie.
So
and now
we are also Adam.
Excellent. We are all
in
Adam.
a way. We're writing what we want to be true.
Yeah, I feel better now.
This is great. I have some questions for our processing of difficult things that we can deal with later, because we are leaning fully in on delusion.
Yeah.
But that is neither here nor there. That's
This is not about us. No.
Not at all. Okay, any other last thoughts before we wrap up?
Once again, shout out to Andrew Scott. Fantastic performance. He's great in everything that I've seen him in, and he's very good in this as well. And just I've primarily seen him in supporting roles, and it was really wonderful to see him get a leading role like this, especially one that is so weighty and meaty and has all of these complex emotions that he is able to just bring to the screen with absolute excellence. So just I'm excited to see him in more things, and I hope that he continues to get these types of like important roles for him, and that he's able to do more of this type of work, because he is just an exceptional actor, and I'm glad that he's getting recognized and praised for his talent and skill, because he's very good at his job.
Yes, love it. I know he is so good in this movie. Honestly, this is a hard role to do. It is so intensely focused as like honestly as a character study, and so this movie really like hangs on him doing his job very well. Paul Mescal as well is also fabulous in this movie, but I think Andrew Scott really does a lot and has more that he needs to do in this movie, and he absolutely nails it. It's really great.
Yeah, no, they're a great pairing too. Like,
yeah,
what a get. This whole, I mean, there's not like that many people in the cast, but you know, our four principal actors that we follow throughout are all exceptionally gifted actors. So it's wonderful to see them in this and in roles that require a lot emotionally, and they all delivered. So
yeah,
great performances all around.
Yeah, so true. So true. All right. Well, this was our review and discussion of All of Us Strangers. You can find it available to stream, I believe, on Hulu. Yes, on Hulu. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Movies and Us. Our name sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories, so everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review, letting us know your thoughts about All of Us Strangers. You can connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at MoviesAndUsPod, or you can email us at moviesanduspod@gmail.com. We will be back next week to discuss the film Monkey Man. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see you again very soon.